Hello everyone, my name is Hyejin Shin. I am a CEO of MUREPA Korea. I'm very glad to present my study in the ASIP 10th conference. Today I present, my title is Technological Innovation in Public Education in the Era of COVID-19, focusing on distance education policy in South Korea. Okay, my research background is, as you know, the COVID-19 continued to spread. The Korean Ministry of Education announced that all public school, including elementary, middle, and high school, must begin on April 9, 2020 via online. Actually, this is the first trial to open the school via online, so there is opposite view among educators regarding the unprecedented attempt to start school online. While distance learning can provide an opportunity to accelerate education innovation in public education using new technology, however, a concern still expected is related to the lack of experience to prepare distance education. So it might be increasing the resulted in the educational inequality. So based on this research background, my study focused on the three objectives. First, my study analyzed the strategy and policy of distance learning in the public education sector. And then my study conceptualized the distance education policy in two domains, including technological infrastructure and technological teaching and learning. And then my study examined what specific policy have supported distance education in school setting. And then finally, this study discussed how strategy and policy could be related to educational equality and equity. So actually, the recently OECD report, the research about the whole the educational area regarding the COVID-19 in school setting. This research uh, about the 1980 countries, they used online surveys targeting organization and educational policymaker and administrator. So this research used the conceptual framework based on the OECD report. So the OECD report focus on the categories. So my study is also making the conceptualized framework based on the technological infrastructure and technological teaching and learning. The technological infrastructure, as you may guess, including the digital device, which means the computer or television or a smartphone. Also, network include internet speed or data on bandwidth. And online platforms such as Google Classroom or Zoom or YouTube. So those elements means about technological infrastructure. And also the other frame include the technological teaching and learning, which means instructional package for like the teacher and the student teaching and learning, and also the internet accessibility, and also the technological teaching and learning included the online content such as the distance learning, the platform or educational resource. So my study is conceptualized about two categories and how the Korea policy promote based on the two category, and also this policy related the equality and then equity issue. So the equality means in terms of purpose of public education, the equality means for the sameness, and the equity means fairness. So based on the two, the value of the public school, my studies also discuss about the equality and equity. So here is my research design. My research data include the MOE annual plan, also the press release uploaded on the website of Ministry of Education between the early March and early August. So here is you can see is a kind of some sample about the press release. As you can see in here, the document in Korean. So I use totally 13 documents. So 13 documents was dealing with the COVID-19 issue in the educational setting. So I used the document analysis and based on the technological infrastructure and technological teaching and learning. So how the Korean Ministry of Education promotes about the two domain of technological infrastructure and technological teaching and learning. You can hear the research, the framework as you can see in this slide. So basically, the equality educational policy in terms of equality is here. So the Korean of Ministry of Education, the equality issue, for example, in here, they support unlimited use of educational content without worrying about data usage for all students. And also, they provide real-time EBS educational content on TV programs, which means if student doesn't have any device and or notebook, and the student can watch the EBS educational content using television. And the Ministry of Education promote establishing a wireless network, and teacher and student can use of Wi-Fi in all their classroom. And also extending the use of distance education solution by domestic software and company. And also they support online textbook and also establishing the communication network through business cooperation with related organizations such as the other the broadcasting cooperation in Korea. And here is the equity issue. So I selected to the distance education policy in terms of equity. So equity means, as I already explained about the fairness. So here you can see that the Ministry of Education promote active support for smart device rental and internet communication expense for low-income students. And also they promote sponsorship of Samsung or LG, as you can see the corporation. So they provide smart device for low-income families. And they also allow to utilize school facility for students who are staying in rural and the fishing villages where IT infrastructure is not installed at their homes. And they also provide device and internet support for low-income students. And also they provide the subtitle for remote classes or sign language for students with visual and hearing impairment and disability students. And finally, also the equity issue can also, as I can see, that reinforce the multilingual language information for multicultural students. So here is my findings. So based on the research framework, I categorized the distance education policy of South Korea based on the technological infrastructure and technological teaching and learning. And you can see here the what specific policy dealing with the equality and equity issue, as I already presented. My research conclusion that the Korean Ministry of Education has attempted a bold challenge of online school opening to minimize student learning gap. But it is worth noting that while the distance learning in public education is not familiar in Korea, the new trial has been actively promoted to support teaching and learning tools without any child left behind. It was valuable to see effort minimizing educational barriers through cooperation among public and private entities outside the public educational sector. And here is my research has some limitation, and this study could not address this type of issue that requires exploring how this policy could be implemented in various school settings in depth. The policy study is also important to be implemented as a setting in as the policy as a practice. So future study need to how the policy applied in the educational setting. And my study here is that there are some the implication. So now distance education is no longer a type of learning that is temporarily used as countermeasures against COVID-19. So technological innovation needed to be connected with innovation in public education. And when designing future education in the response to COVID-19 before highlighting the development of equipment that promote the development of more efficient educational tools, among which better technological innovation should focus on ways to consider education for all so that technological innovation can narrow the educational gap. At the same time, gap in education opportunity due to the absence of equipment and the restricted data connection should not happen in the educational setting. Okay, thank you very much for hearing my presentation, and thank you. Bye bye.